Welcome to Electrolysis Unplugged, an after-hours chat beyond the probe with Joanie and Stephanie. We're here to dive deep into the world of electrolysis, education, and all things hair removal.
Whether you're a seasoned professional or just curious about the art of permanent hair removal, we've got the insights, tips, and fun stories to keep you plugged in.
So grab your tools, take a seat, and let's get into it. This is Electrolysis Unplugged, brought to you by the Electrology Education Coalition.
Hello, everybody. Good evening.
I think this was Melissa that might have asked this, but I'm not 100%. So, what causes a jittery chin, and can you make it stop during treatment? So sometimes, and I might be wrong on the way that this question was asked, and so if I am, correct me, and if I'm wrong about who asked it, also correct me. But uh, there's times where clients aren't used to holding their mouths shut for a period of time, and so they are really trying to talk, but without talking, and so holding their mouth shut, um, to work in that stretch is sometimes the thing that's causing that to happen, because it's like in their heart, they know they're not supposed to talk, right? But also in their heart, they wanna talk about everything that happened the minute they lay down on the table, and sometimes the jitter is that, okay? Other times it can be a little bit of nerves in the area. So, like, if you are in pain, sometimes you will have a bit of a vibration in that space, kinda like when you cry and your lip trembles and you're like, "Mm," right? Same deal, can happen in that space. If that's not what you mean and you're on this call, then I can definitely clarify differently. Giovanni, do you have any other things to add to that?
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's like if they're trying to hold their chin or like tense it in a weird way, they start to kind of spasm a little bit. So I've noticed that like it's like they're like this or something, and then it just kind of starts to vibrate a little bit. I think a lot of it just has to do with maybe relaxing. So I would maybe back off and tell them to like relax their face and just because they're trying to maybe push against you or like hold it to help you, quote unquote, right? So anytime a client tries to move their face in a weird way to help me, it actually hinders more than anything else, right? So it's like stay soft. Let me pull, like pull and push, whichever different way. But like sometimes it's just like a little muscle spasm from just however they're holding their face, just that's what I've noticed.
I literally will tell my patients, I will ask you if I need you to help me.
Hmm.
A lot of times, and the other one is like, if I have you look to the right, but you feel me pulling to the left, okay?
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah,
like,
because they're stretching.
"No." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Stay
go
over there."
back.
And
Yeah.
I just say, "When you feel my tension, okay, relax into it. I do not need you to follow with me." Yes, positioning, Svetlana, yes, positioning can also, happen with
Mhm.
this. If you are in a weird spot with that person, it's naturally causing tension. So, like, yes, there is that component of, like, of the nerves, like, trying to help you and the muscles trying to help you. The one where Joanna was saying, like, where they're trying to help, I tell my patients day in and day out, "I will let you know when I need your help. For the most part, I will not." Except on genital work, right?
Right.
Because, like, that's just too much gravity, right? Or if I'm working on a chest or an abdomen and we might have extra skin or fat
Hmm.
present, and I might have you help me have an opposing stretch. Today I was working kind of on the flank of a guy's back, and he just kept kind of like trying to, I don't know, he was trying to turn himself to help me, and I was like, I that pressure you're feeling from my hand on that stretch is not to move you. It's just to hold that
Yeah.
spot so I can get my insertion in. And so they think that we're not willing to ask, and of course we are.
Sure. I have
Um,
a kind of a funny story. I have a client who always like tries to help me when I do cataphoresis on her lip by moving like this. Every time I get to this side of her lip, she moves her mouth the other way. And I don't know how many times I ended up with the electrode in her mouth. Just stay right there. We're good, but she's constantly like moving up her chin and moving it down. So yes, the extra helpful clients are definitely difficult.
they are not helpful. Um, so okay, a couple weeks ago we had pictures of scabbing. And if you're new to the mentorship hour, you'll see those scabbing pictures on one of the past videos that's being asked about. Um, wonder if you have any showing scarring. Um, I I don't currently have any on my computer to show scarring. Do you have any on
Let
yours?
me check. Let me check to see.
Yeah. Um,
Might.
there is I'm gonna look up the name of this electrologist. I cannot think of her name right now. She's in Atlanta. Um, there was a really cool picture um of an I can't think of her name right now. If I remember it, I'll put it in the chat later with a link to the video that she posted where it showed like, okay, this is acne scarring, this electrolysis scarring.
I've
A lot
seen
of
that
times
in the
you
photo.
saw that one as well. Acne scarring and electrolysis scarring, in my opinion, do look different. I almost would say that in some electrolysis scarring, um, you'll have a loss of volume in the surrounding tissue where it dropped. Where like acne scarring, it's usually like where you dug it out. Okay. Electrolysis scarring is almost like you're missing a plate um, of the dermis underneath where that person would have been putting the filament into the follicle. That's one way we'll see it. Another way we'll see it is kind of like a volcano. Um, so they blew out the follicle. And so what would have been the cap of a mountain originally, right, is now literally an opening like this. And that's just um really shallow insertions and is one of the many ways that you will see this happen. And usually you're just that heat is going right up to the surface and you're just taking the skin with you. I don't, off the top of my head, have anybody else that I would pull up on that one, but I will say that Hairtel, it was a forum that was really popular about 10 years ago. I wouldn't say that the popularity is there as much nowadays. I think that more people have gone over to like the Facebook groups than they are those forums. And then there's also like Reddit ones as well. But those are there's some great electrolysis scarring pictures there. Okay, perfect. Yes.
So what I wanted to show, this is actually from Mike Bono's videos. So when he made the tissue injury, because I did a conference where I kind of talked about skin healing. What I wanted to show, because we talk a lot about like pitting, but like the orange peel effect on the skin that goes away when we do pretty aggressive work, and then the type that doesn't go away, which will then lead to scarring, right? And what I like about this photo is it shows like a crust, right? So like a little scab that ends up on the area, and then when the scab falls off, and you see that the skin has this dimple
It
that
just looks really
eventually will
nice.
fill in and relax as the skin kind of goes through its natural healing, which will take like 18 months to 2 years sometimes. Um, so that's kind of like the slight indentation. What I was showing the other day. So this is actually scarring over here a little bit. I don't know if we can kind of see it. Years of plucking and everything, and you can kind of see some of the pitting that she has in that area. And let's see. There. So let me move this.
See those plates of skin that are gone? So if you look around that follicle, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
He's here
yeah, it almost takes away kind of a crater. Like when you saw that
and here.
image and you saw that little crust come in there, that crust was here as well, but like underneath that, the skin didn't pop back up. And so it's like almost like a plate of
And so like with time, with like years, scar tissue does relax. But when a scar is aggressive enough, it doesn't ever go away. And so like this is what we're talking about. This here.
Can I ask you a question about the aftercare for such stuff, or is that a separate topic?
No, we can talk about it.
totally.
So with such scarring, when let's say when everything is done, when we're all done with complete hair removal, can microneedling be helpful after?
Yeah, because microneedling in a way breaks up that netted scar tissue. And you see it in this
Mhm.
photo here, where that scar tissue looks like a mess. And that's part of the wound module that eventually like the body takes this mess of these fibers, these collagen and elastin fibers, and reworks them to be smooth again. That time period takes a while. So when this is all like a big knot under the skin, microneedling would go in and force break it apart. So that tends to relax these wound modules that are like a big knot, which causes some of those imperfections in specific spots. Now, any kind of treatment like microneedling creates scars too. It's, so like I wouldn't overdo it. So
Right.
like
Well,
a
depends
couple
on the depth of
sessions,
the.
but like I
Mhm.
wouldn't, like do microneedling for 15 years and think that your skin will look good after all that. But yes.
You know, so and I haven't done this in quite a few years, and I'll have to find a picture for an upcoming day to talk about this. But this is where I did sublative RF for some patients.
Hmm.
And that because I had people that had come to me unfortunately with adverse effects previously. And the sublative, you do have like a quick tightening just because you are creating heat. Sublative
Yes.
is it's radio frequency that basically micropunctures the skin and a gridded texture every time you basically fire the radio frequency. And what it does is it helps to stimulate the collagen elastin fibers
Sure.
below the surface of the skin. But like she was saying, that healing process takes a long time. What we're doing is we're creating a little bit of an expedited process, plus increasing the amount of collagen elastin in that
Sure.
space than you would
Well,
have.
it's like forcing the skin to heal the way a better way, as opposed to being like, and this is the photo, by the way, that the question was kind of referring to as we're talking about these kinds of cases here.
In like a case like this, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is not gonna heal
No,
well at
no.
all, the majority of it. The other one that she just showed a second ago, the left
This
side,
one?
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that will have a better chance in
Yeah.
healing, than the other.
This, yeah, this will look better for sure.
Absolutely. And so, like, there's levels of scabs that I would consider acceptable, and there's levels of inflammation, irritation that I totally would consider acceptable. And I would even put it as like clinical endpoint, right? So like
Mhm.
that's kind of like what we're expecting in some cases. And then there's other times where I'm just like, we did too much,
Yeah.
and you can't bounce back from that. And sometimes it's usually over treatment on the side of the technician in those cases. It's not the patient causing that. That's the technician overworking the tissue and not listening to the barriers that they've set for themselves and what's required by them. I know that sometimes people will be like, "Oh, they were non-compliant with their aftercare, post care," but even in the worst corrective skincare situations, you would still be able to control situations like that. And
Well,
that's what
aside from like an infection or like an outright, like excoriation where they're just picking off scabs and causing like bigger wounds, there's really not much that somebody will do that causes that kind of damage to the skin. So have to be careful with always pointing the finger to like they didn't put enough aloe on. I doubt that that's the issue.
hold
So
on.
what are your thoughts on the clinics that will give anesthesia to be able to treat more intense?
I did it for years, I didn't do it. My medical staff did, with my family's practice, and, lidocaine injections with a medical staff, um, and I will say that there were years that we were still kind of trying to figure out, where the sweet spot was, in our early years of doing so. It can be done safely if you understand that the more moisture you're throwing into the skin, even if it's lidocaine, is increasing the moisture gradient to the skin as well. So you're gonna have to adjust your levels. I personally, I am not a fan, and I just got asked this on my TikTok the other day, from a consumer asking about general. I'm not a fan of general anesthesia. I don't think that that is something that's necessary for what the work that we do. I think that that is a added risk for a facility. And by general, I mean like being put under, right? That's an added cost. And it's kinda overkill, right? I definitely think lidocaine injections, if you can access them, just like people going to the dentist before upper lip and lower lip, it has a benefit, right? Um,
But here's a follow-up to this. This question too kind of brings up a good point. The anesthesia shouldn't be used just so you can crank up your settings. It should be used because the patient is not really, able to tolerate otherwise.
Mhm.
So it shouldn't be that because now they're numb, I'm just going to crank it up to the ceiling and just annihilate with the blowtorch. That's not electrolysis. So and actually that photo that I showed of the face, what this patient was actually from a medical clinic, like a dermatologist or some sort of plastic surgeon's office that hired, some back alley electrologist, probably that had no training. This client was numbed up, so they didn't feel the treatments being done. But okay, so maybe the hairs won't come back, but at what cost, And so a good electrologist wouldn't do that because the side effect is that this client's all scarred up now.
Mhm.
So, it's just not right.
And I will even go as far as to say it's like, so, Michaela, so even for surgery prep, yes, even for surgery prep, it can be done. Here's the deal. Um, cranking up the current is not where it's at, right? It's you can kill a hair anywhere as long as you've found the sweet spot for that hair, right? But it's actually that you have to reduce your energy when you get in that spot because of how much moisture goes into that spot. So patients are like, I'm going to numb myself up, go to the dentist. I've had people try to do it themselves. There is a lot of careless stuff that's happening out
Mhm.
there. Uh, but that's not for me to increase my energy. That is for you to lay on the table so that I can do my work, okay? And in most cases, I would be pulling my energy back. I mean, kinda like when you go from a stainless steel filament to an insulated filament, but you're still working within the same modality, your energy is going to shift based on the material that you're using. The material that you have added to that space is lidocaine that has a saline to it, which is going to increase the moisture gradient to the skin. So you would not be cranking that up.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was asking more. I've seen a couple clients who have gone to these clinics that will give them either the lidocaine injections or even the general anesthesia, and the area is like completely pitted and
Mhm.
scarred, and just it's yeah, it looks rough.
Yeah, it's tragic. And I would say that it's not the fault of that service. It is the
Mhm.
fault of the technician not listening to what they see in
Yep.
front of
Well, the
them.
training probably isn't there. And like Michaela, if they use that skin for like for the reassignment surgery,
Yeah.
that scarred up skin is kind of compromised tissue, like it might get to the point where they can't even use it.
Right.
So you gotta, so again, it's not the anesthesia is there maybe just so that the client can lay for 2 hours for you to clear the whole entire area. That's
And
ideal.
and yeah, this clinic that these few clients are coming from say that they work for like maybe 6 to 8 hours.
Mhm. No, she's about to glitch out. Is
Yeah.
everybody else? Okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, 6 to 8 hours, so this is the other thing is you have like a max amount of lidocaine you're allowed in a day, um, depending on your body. Um, and so, like early days, we used to have really long days when we do lidocaine, and then we moved into like basically a 6-hour max, and it didn't make sense. So, yeah, you could do long
I mean,
days
you
in
could
the
do 6 hours if you wanted
Yeah.
to. It's all about making sure you're checking on the skin integrity, making sure that you're not over treating, that, there's nothing wrong with how long it was done or anything like that. It's just that.
and they didn't listen. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you go to when you're trained to know that you're doing this effectively and safely, right? And safely should be like the primary portion there.
Mhm.
And I will say that like when I moved up to Pacific Northwest last year, like there was a case that was kind of going around the clinics here where an individual who had gone to a medical office, unfortunately had the same impact happen. And their surgery date was completely shifted by a couple of years just to heal that tissue as a maybe, and they might have to use secondary graft skin when they had plenty there to work with originally,
Right.
just so they can create their vaginal cavity. And so that's like, I just, I think my big takeaway for you guys on this one is like, can it be done? Yeah, it has to be done safely. And they can't just say, and patients will try to dictate, we are not allowed to inject. That is correct. Some places can, but we cannot. We are not injectors. I know that there's a place in the Midwest that does. It's it's out there. People do it. If they are a nurse and their state allows them to inject, they can. Like you can be an electrologist and a nurse and do that. You might be a nurse. There are people out there. So when you're online and you hear people saying that they do it themselves, I would ask, oh, what's your medical background to be able to do that? And I would kind of like pose that question and see if they're doing it legitimately or illegitimately. If you're really curious about it, but yeah, it definitely can be done. It shouldn't be done by an electrologist that's not trained. Do you guys all know what your scope of practice is, right? Where you work? Okay. So, scope of practice is a nice, beautiful, fancy word for saying to stay in your lane. Like it's like the most simple way to say it, stay in your lane. And so sometimes people do not follow in their scope of practice. And that's usually what we're seeing in these cases. Today, we want to shine some light on some of our amazing partners who are helping shape the future of electrology education, services, distribution, and so much more. We're thrilled to have such amazing partners and supporters. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned professional, these vendors and schools have what you need to succeed.
Hey there, electrologists. My name is Hazel Bloom. I'm a life coach for the LGBTQIA+ community and its allies. As a trans woman, I have done the hard work and introspection to figure out who I am, what I want from life, and how to live authentically as myself. These are universal skills that I can teach you and help you gain the confidence to thrive. Also, I know that the conversations with clients on the table can get a bit intense and beyond the scope of electrology, so I'd invite you to refer them to me so they can get the support they need through a tough time instead of taking that burden on yourself. I'm also available as a resource for you if you just need some assistance figuring out how to help a client or to ask any questions. Whatever you need, I can help. My website is kiwifruitcoaching.com, or you can email me directly, hazel@kiwifruitcoaching.com.
Heading to the Golden State, California Electrology Academy offers an immersive learning experience that prepares students for national certification as well as many states with reciprocity to California's licensing exams. Led by Joanie and Joanne Gonella, they bring decades of quality services and education. CEA offers flexible schedules, open enrollment, and a supportive learning environment, making them a perfect place to start your electrology journey. Be sure to check them out for cutting-edge education right in sunny Southern California. And visit electrologyacademy.com. That's electrologyacademy.com. Zapmaster Electrology is located in the Pacific Northwest in Centralia, Washington. Stephanie Shields and her Zaplings lead the charge with award-winning education. Whether you're just starting out or looking to deepen your expertise, Zapmaster offers hands-on training, online theory courses, and so much more. And don't forget their distribution center. Led by Michael Shields, this is your one-stop shop for high-quality tools, products in electrology, aesthetics, laser hair removal, and so much more. Ready to enhance your practice? Visit thezapmaster.com. That is thezapmaster.com, and discover the resources awaiting for you. Thanks for tuning in to Electrolysis Unplugged. Be sure to check out our amazing sponsors for the best in electrology tools, training, technology, and so much more. Now, back to the show. Okay, so this was a funny one that came through. The elephant in the room. How electrologists should stop bad-mouthing each other amongst themselves and or to clients.
Wow.
The biggest thing is if it's happening to you or it's happened to you, just understand that you get to stand in a space and speak your own piece. Always speak positively about your colleagues, even when we're saying like, yes, it does happen, right? I'm not going to give you the person's name. I'm not going to give, even if I know it, right? Because it doesn't matter. It happens in so many places. We have people who struggle with doing treatment in so many places. It like it's just a matter of we get to be the change, right? So a lot of times that happens a little bit in the like,
And I think we kind of talked about this. It must have been like in January or at least early February. And I was talking about like a certain situation that had happened where I had a client who had came to me for a consultation, had gone to another local electrologist, and um, their skin had, like a good amount of like scarring and redness and things like that. And um, I saw them. We kind of talked about, what the issue was and everything and what the treatment plan was going to be. But they ended up going on Facebook. I woke up that morning, the next morning, and I recognized the like the skin. So not even the whole face was posted, but just like a snapshot of like the skin and the chin and everything. And it was a lynch mob is the best way that I can explain it, because then you had like the whole peanut gallery kind of throwing in their 2 cents about name the electrologist that did this, and they don't know what they're doing, they should be reported to the board and blah blah blah. And then these are people that had never seen this patient's face except for a grainy crappy photo on Facebook, that did not know what the background was or what it looked like in real life. And I remember the one electrologist that was like probably holding the pitchfork the most, I private messaged her saying that, like I actually saw this person in real life. I said, we've already consulted about what was going on. And I said, they have like eczema all around their face and a lot of acne scarring. So most of it probably had almost nothing to do with the work that was done before, even if it wasn't satisfactory. And even if it wasn't the best, and even if I know this electrologist is a little bit more on the aggressive side, but it comes to show that like you have to be careful, because they come, especially clients posting their crappy photos, and everybody just kind of jumps in and it's just so ready to start bashing other people. I don't think that's the way to do it at all. You can put in your commentary that is relevant to the case, but you remember that you don't know all the facts.
there I had an interesting moment kind of maybe early last year where I had responded on the consumer side on Facebook. It was on the worldwide page, and I stated my I wouldn't even call it an opinion, my professional assessment on something, and then someone's like, respectfully, no. And I was like, well, I'm like, maybe like that's actually a respectful way to say that. And it really came down to, and I had a good conversation with them afterwards, and I was like, it's a way I would have navigated that differently. Is it is just simply saying, on the opposing side, my professional assessment says this, right? So it might just be down to each individual's thing, and then people go, okay, so if this person has this impact and this person has that impact in their treatment room, which one am I going to select? Because unless that person that's asking the question on the internet is in your neighborhood getting hair removal from you, guess what? The minute they go into a clinic that doesn't say what you say, and then they can't access that, it's going to make them so sad. I remember seeing, and I am a multi modality operator. I mean, Joanie and I always joke about this. Like, she's the one that kind of like pushed me more into like thermolysis when I got my Apolis years ago. But like, I had been multi-needle blend as a standing point, right? Um, Even so, I tell my students all the time, I'm like, your modality is based on which one you feel most comfortable with. You get to learn all of them at school, right? And then once you learn them, you find what you like best in your hands. When you go on the internet and say, oh my gosh, this is the only modality for that. What happens when that person can't do that? Okay. Let's just play devil's advocate. Someone has keloid scarring, and every time they get their skin warmed up, they cannot do thermolysis, right? Okay. And you're like, thermolysis is the only way for this. Not that that would be the case, right? What happens when they can't do that? Does that mean that they can't access it? Same case on the other side. I have PCOS. Okay. You guys know that I advocate for it all the time. Saw another conversation that blend was the only thing for PCOS. What happens when you have a pacemaker? Okay. What happens when you simply cannot handle the electricity feeling versus the RF feeling, right? What happens when that happens? Does that mean that you can never have electrolysis because all that you could do was that one modality? No. A good electrologist, and this is every one of you, goes, hey, I can't use this tool on you, so I got another one that I get to use, right? And so I never want you guys to live in this is me on my soapbox. I never want you guys to live in a camp that says I have to do it this way, because you're going to get humbled very quickly as new electrologists in other ways in your practice when you have to work in those other spaces. So I think that's probably a wise takeaway from in the bad mouthing industry is it's important to speak from your assessment of a situation and have all the key components to that. How many times do we know that patients go on the internet before they go to their technician? You guys see it all the time. I'm going to go ask Dr. Google first, because clearly the AI knows better, right? And really, then they should have been coming back to their technician who was in the room with them, right? So it goes across all avenues.
One good response that I've been noticing, by the way, on Facebook is when people say go back, have you talked to your electrologist, or go back to your electrologist and bring this up to them. I like when that kind of comes up in the beginning, because that's really the right way to go about it. If then, the client comes back and says, well, my electrologist, couldn't explain it or whatever, they need further explanations, then sure. But it should always be that you need to go talk to your electrologist, because again, it goes back to what I was talking about. You don't have all the information sometimes, so you have to be careful.
May I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
Mhm.
So Stephanie, you had mentioned that in the case of someone having a pacemaker, a different modality, so I have a patient that was super excited to get started. She's 70 and had booked out several appointments ahead of time. And then she did some research on the internet and saw that she has a pacemaker. So I told her that in order to proceed, I'd need to see a doctor's note. But even if she got that, I don't know how to answer that question. What's
So,
the best way to proceed with someone who's has a pacemaker?
well, you don't want to run current through her body. You want to go from point A to point B. So that's the first part. So you're not going to be doing cataphoresis at the end. You're not going to be doing galvanic or blend during the treatment. And you're going to stick to your thermolysis modalities.
But it's safe if you do it within those parameters.
Here's my professional assessment on that.
Okay.
I would say that I have never seen an adverse impact from a pacemaker in recent years on my own table. That being said, it has not been recently studied with newer machines. And so we do not have a recent study to state otherwise from what we said back in the 90s and beyond. So that's probably the best way that I would go about answering it is professionally speaking, most electrologists have never had all electrologists that I've spoken to have not had this impact on their table negatively when doing thermolysis. When doing galvanic current or galvanic in their treatment plan, they definitely still will shy away from it because there are no recent studies to state that galvanic is now currently safe in the market for that. Okay. And that's how I would kind of you're giving that patient the control and saying we don't have a recent study. However, we have the study of electrologists in our treatment rooms, seeing it day in and day out, and it's safe to do in these spaces.
Mhm.
The same thing applies to pregnant women, right? When they used to talk about don't do electrolysis during pregnancy. Well, who's going to practice on a pregnant lady? Are you going to be the one to figure out whether or not it's okay to do galvanic current on her tummy when she's 9 months pregnant or early in gestation? I mean, you're not going to do that, right? And so it is the unknown of how that could impact somebody that we are signing off on with their doctor. when I ask you for a doctor's note, even when I'm doing thermolysis on you and you're pregnant, it is because two things are happening. One, you got hormonal hair growth, and you're going to be telling me halfway through your treatment plan that you're still hairy. No kidding. Okay. Second, you've been trying to conceive for a very long time. You probably have a hormone imbalance that's happening there. I'm not going to be the reason that something is a question mark in your life when something does not go right. If your doctor approves it, then your doctor is at blame there, not me. And I know that that sounds like I'm being like, but I have to be, because you're asking me to take on a risk for an unknown. And so I'm telling you, this is how I would go about that. I mean, would you say similarly, Joanie, or like, am
Yeah,
I
you
just
know, the thing is
guessing?
like a lot of like the contraindications with currents, you know, like things, frequencies have evolved, machines have evolved with time. I mean, and it could be like, okay, I've never heard in the history of the world of electrolysis that electrolysis causes keloids, but yet it's still a contraindication, and we learn not to do certain things with keloids, but it's never caused one. The fact is, theoretically, we can understand how that works, because a keloid is like scar tissue gone out of whack, right? We cause scar tissue because we go inside, we create a wound module, blah, blah, blah. So there's always, you know, hypothetically, the chance that you could cause a keloid, but it's never happened. So pregnancy, would galvanized current going through your body technically harm something that is not, you know, metal, right? It's a baby, probably not. But like you said, like sometimes I tell people it's not so much about the current, but maybe about the stress that you're inducing from doing the treatments, because some people come in and electrolysis stresses them out because it's a little painful. Right. So that alone would be a reason for them to maybe put a pin in that until afterwards, especially if they've been having issues conceiving, and maybe it's a sketchy type of, you know, a sketchy pregnancy, let's say. So there's kind of more at play to that. A pacemaker technology's evolved, and
Mhm.
there's less interference with things in general, right?
Mhm.
And so has our machines. And so yes, I've heard from, I don't remember who, that like some of the pacemakers that are out there, like there's no interference, like there's no issues of possible interference. But like Stephanie said, unless we have that in black and white somewhere in a research, in a journal, it's not something that we can say,
Mhm.
right? So, or working hairs that grow out of moles, that's another one, right? So it's not because doing electrolysis on those hairs is automatically going to cause that mole to become cancerous. Actually, most of them are perfectly benign. But there's the chance that moles sometimes can form, you know, can transform into a cancerous lesion. And so you don't want to be the reason that, you know, they might point the finger at. And so you want a doctor's note. So it's kind of, a lot of this stuff is just is kind of along the same vein, I think. It's just a lot of hypotheticals, maybe what ifs, and we just cover our butts.
Yeah. And CYA goes very far. Okay. So Michaela and Pauline, you both had questions about galvanic current in regards to like fast blend and so in the theme of advancing technology, um fast blend. So when I first started kind of like venturing more into thermolysis with my Gentronics, okay, so this was like right before I got my Appalus. I still have a Gentronics, and I have three different makes in my office in the school, and I like them all. Okay, but I started venturing into speeding up my overall current, and getting some live production in a shorter amount of time. And it was me, and you guys will learn this about me. I like to tinker with my stuff to see how far I can take it, and in safe spaces. Okay. So like it's not necessarily I'm doing that in public. It's like I'm pretty hairless from laser, but the few hairs that I have left, it's me messing with those just to see what that looks like. Okay. Fast blend. If you go off of Hinkle's 1968 text, um, there is a conversation about fast blend in there, but they're usually talking about a quicker blend in regards to a smaller hair. Okay. So less dense hair. We still can utilize fast blend on hairs that are terminal as well. And the reason I say this is once we've gone through a initial clearance and we get to that, and when you guys see the treatment planning staircase, we talk about control method, control, right? When you get to that control phase, everything that's there is like prime for killing, right? Because everything is in the right, like it's all balanced out. We know what it looks like. She's got balloons going. It's cool. Don't worry, mine was doing it a couple weeks ago. I had fireworks too. So when we go into those spaces, we are definitely looking at this and we're saying, okay, if everything is prime and it's ready for blend, right? I got nice juicy hairs, my skin is balanced. It's not my first time on that area. I could utilize a longer blend, a traditional like 4-second, to break down those hairs. And then the next clearance, I can go back in there and do a shorter blend. So I'm using that tool. And yes, you could do it in the first time back, right? But I'm using that tool in its most efficient way. Okay. So I'm saying first clearance was thermolysis, get me blasted through there, or I did laser hair removal on them and I blast that through there. My next one for myself, I like to go back in there with a blend, right? The reason I usually like to do that is because patients tend to like come in with a lot of distorted follicles. And so I like doing blend on distorted follicles, so I do it, right? But I also do thermolysis on them too. So it's like, that's just kind of like what we would do. So I would do like a manual thermolysis on that space because I know I need to kind of like get that slow roasted. So that's a big part of it. Machines are smarter now. They are no longer made in somebody's garage, in a back alley. They are more, they are very smart and they have, motherboards versus tubes. And they have, I mean, they're so different than 1968 Hinkle. Okay. Then you have filaments. Filaments have changed exponentially even since the 90s. When the AIDS epidemic happened in the 80s, 90s, and we moved to the disposable probes, that moved us into an era where we were utilizing like machine making stuff and higher levels of disinfection, or sterilization, I should say, in those spaces. And so in doing so, our tools became better. And I am really excited about this. We just confirmed with Dr. Sarah Paisner of ballet. She's going to be talking to us in the upcoming weeks. And the 23rd of April, she'll be on with us. And we're going to get to ask her a lot of questions about that. And when it comes to like the chemistry side of things, she has a really great way of being able to break it down because she has a background in chemistry. That's like where she had her doctorate, right? So I do think that there is something that we can like lean into in further conversations there. But when it comes to like fast blend, we're really talking about the fact that we are getting that blend to create light, and especially on the 27 megahertz machine. If you have one or you can play with one, it is really cool to see how quickly you can get light to produce on 27 megahertz versus 13.5. When a traditional is 4 seconds on a 13.5, you double everything up, it goes to 2. So that's what we saw is like we physically were seeing that change happen in the early 2000s to mid 2010s. It's been pretty amazing. But a lot of that happened because I couldn't stop messing with a machine. I was telling Kelly Morrissey all about it. And so then she started playing with her Appleist to do that. And then we started like really getting into like big conversations about it because we knew it was talked about in the Hinkle book, but it was talked about in terms of like fine hair versus thick hair, not like new hair versus old hair. I think is a better way to say it. Yeah. Second part, when you were asking about like where the ground can be placed, as long as it's past the midsection, for myself, I just want to be able to have that coverage on myself before I worry about where I put that ground. And could you? Sure. But make sure it has some exposed surface so that you're not like completely having that underneath the sensitive area. And then metal fillings, new fillings, it's not really an issue. I don't think it's an issue for old fillings. I think that like it was that unknown and that they were just like, oh, probably not a good thing because it's metal. But it's not really a contraindication.
I would be more concerned about like bridges
Yeah.
and like dental implants and only on the area, like an upper lip,
Mhm.
a full mouth of braces, like a lot of metal.
Yeah.
Usually fillings is not an issue.
Braces is the one that I always laugh when sometimes I would take on a client for one of the other girls at the office, and it was so funny because go to like finish up, and I haven't looked inside of her mouth because I was stepping in, and I have done that cataphoresis, and they have braces, and I'm like, sorry. That whole TikTok where they're like, zzz, like that
Yeah,
was,
right.
you won't die though. I know that it's the end. We will definitely pull some of these. Um, uh, Michaela, there's rumors of them when it comes to other 27 megahertz. You guys, there's so many rumors in the electrology community. I'll believe the machines when I see it. Okay. But I don't know of anybody right this very second for sure, that has it. I know that there is supposed to be an announcement of one. So we'll see. I'm like, I can't wait till we see the freaking Excel's back in normal production.
Mhm.
I'm
Me
like
too.
that. All these poor
Me
students
too.
finishing school that are like, what? I want to play with that one.
Do you
So
know why they've halted production or what's going, because I have someone that is gonna have to wait.
It's not, the production is not halted. They just cannot meet the demands with the size of the manufacturing that they had. And so it was, issues with sourcing parts in like the early 2020s when COVID was happening. Then it was that, they couldn't meet their distribution market with the size of like the machinery, because I mean, to make a machine, and you can actually watch, Kelly made a TikTok showing the manufacturing process of the machines. And so, the tests that they go through, I think it takes one machine a full week to be made from start to finish. And let's say they can only do 20 machines a week. So in a month, they can maybe make 80, but 500 people ordered. Then it's like, good luck, And so they've just recently finished an expansion of their manufacturing plant to double the space. So they added like 10,000 square feet. That's nice, but they're also in Quebec, Canada, where labor is difficult to find because everybody wants to be paid, like astronomical wages, which is fine because they're all engineers, but if you know Clement personally, that's a different story. So then he doesn't have the people to work, and he would need people around the clock. He would need a first, second, and third shifts to be able to do production almost 24 hours a day. So that's kind of the problem. He cannot meet demand. I had a call today from an electrologist asking if she can have her friend in China buy the machine. I said, there's no manufacturer in China. Whatever you're buying is an empty box. And then whoever your friend is trying to buy from won't get it any faster because it's all coming from the same place. So it's like, it doesn't matter. Like she said, can I go to Canada directly? Sure. They're going to send you right back, so it's not going to work. It's just unfortunately they squeeze out 80 machines a month and there's 500 people waiting for them. That's the problem. And it's slow to catch up.
Yeah.
So put your name in the queue.
Sorry.
That's just what you have to do.
There's some students who have recently graduated that have their business like completely set
know.
up and ready to go, and they can't work because they're waiting on the machine.
I know it's a
They're
joke.
looking for like
We get
used
into arguments
seniors and
almost
stuff.
weekly with
Yeah.
them. So trust me when I say that, like, you're not
Yeah.
the only one that's pissed off, because honestly, I find it kind of atrocious.
Yeah.
And if it means, like, here's a couple things, like at least for aesthetic systems, we take a deposit. So you don't have to fork out, 10K for a machine. So put down a deposit and then we order your machine. So that means that at least, we can get that going. Then if you want to buy a different brand or something used that will then eventually maybe be your backup, that's kind of what most people will end up doing. And so you could buy something else that will, like we have Instantrons at the school because, we've taught people you can buy one of those. It's a simple machine, but it will serve its purpose at least for you to get started.
Yeah. I think
You
the
guys-
problem here is that the school doesn't teach on anything other than the products from Detro. So
Sure,
people
but here's the
are
thing.
kind of-
It's not a difficult machine to learn. It really
Yeah.
isn't. You're
Yeah.
going to school to learn the insertion.
Yeah.
Okay, so you learn that, and then after that, like some of my students, yeah, and even with the Instantrons, they're all fighting over the Apple's machines in the classroom. Okay, everybody wants to work on those, but I have maybe 6 Instantrons, and so they can set up on it. And when I have one, she's like, "Well, I bought an Instantron. Can I come back and you show me how to use it?" And we come up with like 5 different settings, like fine, medium, medium
Mhm.
coarse, extra coarse. Put that on a post-it on top of your machine, and then you have your presets, you know? So and it's not difficult,
So
honestly.
here's another question. The Instantron machine is probably a lot cheaper. Is it,
Mm-mm.
is it?
It's about
like
the size. It's the same price as a senior.
Oh, okay. But
I will say that just so you guys know, because you guys, I'm fairly certain you guys know that I also have a school in distribution. I am currently able to get silhouette tones in about 3 weeks. So if you get out of school and you're looking for a machine to get going and you order your Apple's, right? So you put your down payment so that you can start that clock. You just have to call up my school and I will get you the silhouette tone as well. And like there is like we're all working to make sure that you guys have like machines in
Yeah,
hand
something.
as possible. So if that ever happens, and I just so you guys know, we are kind of in this unfortunate space together. I've never seen machines go out of stock like or be this back ordered, which is promising in a weird way because it's like you're seeing the revitalization of
Of the
like an
Mhm.
almost extinction, right? But I know that, and I'll teach you all day long to work that machine. So that if that ever has to happen, and you're waiting and you don't want to use something like the Instantron, and the Instantron also, Dr. Paisner was the one that ended up buying Instantron after Skip retired. She has new engineers on it. She's going to be looking at that thing and like she was like, "Hey, let's talk about like what I could do differently on the next generation." And so I think that we're gonna see
Yeah.
a shift there as well. I
Sure.
think that like of your major machine makers here in the States, or not state bound, but like here that we're seeing in the States, we can usually get machines from Silhouette Tone within a couple of weeks. Claire Blend is still around, Michaela.
Yeah.
Um I think that you can only get Claire Blend at the convention or through Randa's school. I'm not when I tried to call them for troubleshooting for an out of town student's machine, they just didn't, they're like, "Oh, just call Randa." And I was like, calling the person I would buy it from, I thought. But like like I don't know much about their sale process right now. But I mean, Randa teaches on those all the time as well. Um so we have okay, Claire Blend, Silhouette Tone, Apple's, Instantron, and I feel like I'm missing somebody in there.
Is there
Well, there's-
like
I mean,
Sterex or
Sterex.
Oh, the
Stereblend?
Sterex, yeah, and the
Yeah,
Sterex.
the Sterex makes like simple little machines, you know.
They're
So
like
there's like
tiny,
yeah.
yeah,
So there's those
couple
two.
settings.
So I mean there's options out there.
Yeah.
It's just and it can always be a backup, you know, and that's I think that anybody that does this job, you know, pretty full time and kind of you really uses their machine, you better safe than sorry. You know, you kind of want something to pull out should you need it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the Cadillac. So
And what I like about this weird space is like at least it gets people in a machine that is kind of like set up to the same speed they are when they get out of school. Like get yourself into 13 and a half when you get out of school. By the time you've gotten yourself warmed up in your space, that becomes your backup machine for when something can go awry and you got the 27 ready to work. So they're
Do you know what the cost of like the Instantron?
I think they're
is-
around 4,500.
yeah, the
Okay.
Instantron's about 4,600. So that's why I'm saying it's the same cost as a senior machine.
And the
So if you take-
Silhouetteron?
The ST250 was like 35.
And that's the newest one, or like how often do they update those?
They're actually coming out. I can't say that yet.
Okay, I get it. Okay.
You're gonna get me in trouble. Like I know nothing until
Okay.
but Michaela, if you have questions regarding that, just give me a holler. Like, I got you.
Okay.
I'm like, don't put me on video saying nothing.
And Hannah, the down payment for an Appleist will depend on which machine you end up getting. So the like a junior, I think is about $1,000. A senior is 1,500, and an XL is about 2,000.
And can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had silhouette tone before. I've had two 27s and I love them. I do, but I loved my silhouette tone. And when I was gaining some hours with Stephanie this past summer, I used one of the silhouette tones there, and it's a really nice machine. I'm actually thinking about buying one as a backup, just because I think it's always good to have different options. And I opened up a second location, so my original 27 is there, and I don't know. I feel like I need another backup, and I don't know. I'm gonna be calling one of these girls. Yeah.
Is the silhouette tone
I'll be
27
waiting, but
megahertz?
the silhouette tone it's a very nice machine. I love
No,
my
it's a
silhouette tone before.
13.56.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, depending on how you set, I don't know. It sounds like I'm underselling the Dectro, but and obviously I bought a second one. But the silhouette
I mean,
tone does the
The
job.
Dectro is a very good machine, so that's
Yeah,
everybody-
I love it.
everybody knows that, but it's
You guys
just
are
yeah.
gonna find out, like, when you guys see me in my space, I love playing with electrolysis machines, and if I
Right.
could have one of every brand at the school, I probably would, and I
Mhm.
probably will. To be honest, it's probably my little, like, ADHD hyperfixation is buying machines, and I don't think it will ever go away.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, there's so many good ones out there, so if you can nail one on eBay or, like, make sure it
Facebook.
like,
Yeah.
do a FaceTime if you're buying an aftermarket machine from somebody, even if they are your best friend, okay? Get on there with like a FaceTime or a video call and make sure that that person you are talking to shows you their face and the machine and shows you that it's working, okay?
Mhm.
Because I have heard nightmares of people buying machines online, spending tons of money, then they have a broken machine, no warranty, and they're out.
Don't Venmo, don't do Cash App or whatever
Right.
else. Use PayPal, because you can at least fight for your money back if you receive an empty box. Like, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Buying used stuff, and sometimes, like, it's if everything's good, people don't pack them right. That happens a lot, where they just get tossed in a box, like not even packing paper to be seen. The thing comes in pieces. Like, you kind of laugh, but FedEx and UPS like to drop kick your packages to your door. So imagine if that's your machine. So it comes in pieces. It's broken, and then we fix the machines in California, and then they get there, and it's just like it's in complete shambles. Everything's broken, and then it's like there's not much to do.
I'm just double checking this real quick before we log off. I have to double back when I bought my um I bought my Gentronics from another electrologist friend of mine. When the box showed up, I was like, I'm not gonna freak out. Okay. Not gonna freak out. This is where we're all gonna cry
Higher.
for in that moment. This is what the box looked like.
Oh. Oh my gosh. Oh.
And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. I was not fine. I was like, and she forgot to pack the power cord. So I had no idea if it was still working. And I've known her for years. So I had to go and steal my son's computer cord from the back of his computer, plug it into the machine to see if it would turn on, epilate a couple hairs for myself to see if it worked. And I was like, okay, we're good. Right. We fixed it. But oh my God. Yeah. So that's
That's a question though. If you have to send your machine in, how long does that take? I mean, I know we're on a waiting period for the newer machines, but let's just say that you have to send in your machine. How long does that take?
We usually have
Approximately.
boards. We usually have boards on hands. So, like, if it's like a repair, like sometimes it's just like resoldering something.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like this piece is cracked and we have to replace a piece. And if it's a replacement of a board, unless they're back ordered on something on the board, we
Right.
usually have extra boards, and so we'll swap those out. Extra screens and things like that. So
Okay.
most of the time, it's like what happens is we receive them. He does his tests first to make sure to let like all the power is coming out of every hole as it should. Then he changes, cranks up stuff. Then I receive it, and I normally take it to my office. That's probably the part that takes the longest because I like to work with it for like at least 2 to 3 days, full days. Because if there's any fluctuation from morning to night or this modality or that modality, that's how you catch it. And so then once everything's good, I take it back and we ship it back. That's usually how it works.
Okay. I think that's my worry about grabbing another machine. But in the original 27, they're not working on those anymore, correct?
The platinums, no, they're discontinued.
Yeah.
And I have a few at the school, and they're all becoming expensive paperweights. They're already out of parts to replace stuff. So
I love that machine. I'm like Stephanie. It was blend, and then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, I love doing thermolysis now, right?
It's a very smooth thermolysis machine.
Paperweight, no.
I feel bad about this, but
we gotta go.
Kids have popped their head to the door twice to be like, and they're waiting for me for dinner. So, bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.